Hey, welcome to the first layer. I'm Richard.
Hey, Richard. Hey, wow, you're really peaking this time around. I don't know.
Wow.
Wow.
Let me see if I can adjust this.
Welcome to.
Is that better?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Is that better?
Oh,
better?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Better.
Hey, I'm Richard. That's Brian. You know that guy.
Hello. Yes.
And
I'm going to take these off. I'm going blind.
yeah, Richard's only coming out of the right speaker. Yes, and Brian's only coming out of the left speaker. So we're going to be in your head twice.
Hello from the left side.
We'll be like the angel and devil on your shoulder. One will speak into the right, one will speak into the left.
Except we're both devils.
It's totally trippy on my end, too.
I bet.
Totally trippy. Hey, welcome to the show. This is the first layer. This is our Ask for Help Sunday afternoon live stream, which we do every week. And today we have no questions. No questions came in this week.
Good, because I have answers to questions you didn't want to ask.
Oh, okay. All right.
Things like why you need to have one of these in stock. Yeah, for those of you who have been following the ongoing saga of Brian's bench, he looks like crap in the Prusa video. It was a result of this guy, and actually it turns out one of these two was stripped, and the nozzle had a little bit of play. So after spending hundreds upon hundreds on just different upgrades and all that stuff, $10 on Amazon.
There you go. Hey, we've got a few more people to welcome real quick. We've got some new members. I'm sorry I didn't get your names into the list this week. I just looked at them like 5 minutes before the show started, so I apologize. Welcome to our new members. Hopefully I'll get that done. We have a new person in our chat today, and that is my shorter older brother, Raymond. And he's now a proud owner of two, count them, two printers. He has himself a Lotmaxx SC-10, as well as he's got himself the Wanhao Duplicator 6 Plus? 7 Plus?
Is this?
The resin printer?
Something like that.
Hey, we got ourselves a super chat.
Hey, Pagan Wizard. Pagan, I should say that right.
Super chat.
Raymond says he's better looking. He is better looking.
Yes.
So first of all, let's first say Chad Wilcox has got here. Thanks, guys, for the different slicer options. I just switched from Matter Control to PrusaSlicer 2.3 and couldn't be happier. Amazing. Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. Pagan Wizard, thank you for the $5. Is there a setting in Cura that allows you to scatter the stop-start points on the print to avoid the seaming look?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let me just pull it up here. Actually,
I'll
Let's
pull
see if I
Brian
can-
up full. There we go.
Okay, let's see. Did that translate properly? Perfect. Okay, so if you search up Z-Seam in Cura, you'll find this Z-Seam alignment. Now, it doesn't give you as many options such as PrusaSlicer for painting the seam. However, you have a choice between sharpest corner. Oh, they do have a user specified. I'm sorry. So maybe they do have a paint feature now. I don't know much about it, but take a look into it. Shortest looks for the shortest areas to keep it in, but what you're probably looking for is random, so it will scatter the Z-seam all over the print. Now, the downside to this is if you have a very bold Z-seam, then basically you're going to do a lot of sanding around it. So if you do have a bold one that you can't get rid of, keeping it on, for instance, sharpest corner is a great way to hide it, but otherwise, random, if you've got dialed in, it's going to hide it quite well. Hopefully that quick crash courses you into it.
There you go. That pretty much answers that question. What else we got here?
I just saw my
DeWitt
frame
3D
rate
says,
going
hi Raymond,
to-
congratulations. From the Sanska, I always mess that one up. Maybe you can send me that in like normal English speak, and I can get that name right. What are your thoughts on the Prusa MM2S? Is it worth getting, or is the Mosaic better? I haven't tried the MM2. There is one here in the house. I have to hook it up yet, but at this time, I still think the Mosaic does a better job because of the way that it slices things. So I think that it does a little bit of a better job. So I think if you're going to spend the money, go with the Mosaic. You can put it on any other printer as well. And there are a lot of user-defined profiles out there already. So,
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I've never personally played with those material swappers. I understand how they work, and there is a lot of complexity to it. The biggest reason I don't use them, honestly, is because you're limited to one material type when you're going through it based off the melting point. It gets really ugly if you try to mix filaments in there, and you don't want to do it. It's just a headache.
yeah, I agree. I agree 100% on that. So we don't have another question straight up, so I'm going to run our members down at the bottom and just take a moment here to say if you want to become a member, just hit that join button down at the bottom. We're going to discourage you from using Patreon. We haven't had that active in quite some time, so we want to put everything sort of in one bubble. I know that may not be smart from an investment point of view, but we want to put everything in one bubble. We also want to let you know that we haven't had a live stream for our members yet this month, and we are going to try and get one out this week. Brian and I have to arrange our schedules so that we can do that. But
Yeah, and we've had some terrible weather up this way, guys, to be honest with you. Like, as we were just saying in the show opening, we have 100-kilometer-an-hour gusts today, with 20 centimeters of snow coming tonight. Meanwhile, the last few days have been 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. So these fluctuations of air pressure have just been knocking a lot of us on our feet.
Yes, very much so. Let's go and
I just want
choose
to say,
this.
Henry
Go ahead.
Stoffern got an Ender 5 Plus this week. Congratulations, man. I've always wanted to get one of those machines. You got
I've
to
been
let us
thinking
know
about it.
how it worked out. Yeah, I want to get one because I love the build volume, honestly. It's a CR-10 in a cube form. You can't
basically.
beat that. And, you know, we're going to go a bit more into the different types of printers in the future here, but simply put, they're just so much more rigid than your bed slinger.
I agree. And Henry, while you're here on the show today, I am going to take you up on your offer. And you can just send me an email again. Sorry I didn't get back to you, but I will take you up on your offer in the email. We won't go into the details here. But we got another question here.
DK6, is that the one we're pulling up here?
I think she's pulling up DK6.
Do we have any experience with the Soval SV02? I think, didn't you have experience with that one?
No, the Soval SV02 I never had any experience with. I think that's just a plain old Cartesian machine, is it not?
Yes. I'm going to have to pull it up. I remember there was a lot of chatter about it. I won't lie to you guys. When it comes to a lot of these different printer companies, you got to be really careful. And I'll kind of explain. For example, I recently acquired from Richard the WeDo X40 for some experimentation here, and the documentation is, needless to say, pretty appalling. Like they're a good company, but there are a lot of things that are just simply not black and white documented, such as how to operate the inductive sensor. It's all on the LCD, but there's nothing to read online, and the firmware is not open source as of yet. So, when it comes to printers, I do like to stick to the main brands. Creality, Mingda has proven themselves to us as a viable competitor to Creality. Any other company, Wanhao has always been good, but some of these Kickstarter printers, especially, they've got the design right and they've got the mechanics right, but the documentation is lacking, and that can be a killer for a lot of people.
So I'm looking at I'm looking at it right now, actually. And this is a machine that has a dual extruder Bowden style 3D printer. It's 11 inches by 4.9 inches by 11.8 inches. It's not very big.
Right.
So in terms of the build volume, you're looking at, your build volume's 280 by 240 by 300. So it's not quite as big as a CR-10. Where I would caution you is that 2-in-1 hot end. 2-in, 1 out hot end. That to me is a recipe for disaster. And the reason that I say that is because with the 2 inlets on the top, if you haven't got your retraction set correctly and you don't have those 2 filaments lined up, you can run into jams very quickly and very easily. So I would be very cautious about that. I mean, the price is right, but at $119 US, you get what you pay for.
It's a lot of money. And,
well, if you really need dual color, there's a better way to do it. Definitely a better way to do it.
Such as IDEX.
IDEX would be a much better way to do it, yes.
Yeah, and you're going to see, honestly, going forward, honestly, preliminary conclusion is that IDEX is the future of multi-nozzle extrusion, with the exception of like E3D tool changers and stuff. But IDEX looks like the easiest way to implement a dual extruder where you're not having to fight with balancing nozzle heights in a more complex fashion. Now, I just wanted to bring this up on Soval's site. Hopefully I got the right screen. Nope, that's my thermal one. This is what they feature on their website, and they talk about mixing hot ends versus 2-in-1 out hot ends. Now, the reason, like they say, it leads to faster and more stable color switching. In theory, yes. However, every time you change that color, you need to quickly retract from the nozzle all the way back up to this point, which is quite a distance. I'd have to actually measure it, but I assume it's almost 100 millimeters, isn't it?
I think it's about 100 to 120 millimeters.
Yeah, so you have to pull it back that whole way and hope that nothing got caught in there. Which, you know what, there's still going to be stuff in the end. You're still going to have to do your color purge and all that. But that's a long retraction, and you have to pull it through there quickly, and if it swells, then you clog the hot end. Now, times that by 2 with 2 materials, same issue. Especially with, again, you can't mix you can't mix types of filament unless they are right on that same temperature range. So you might have luck with dissolvables, but it's not a good way of doing things. We've seen people talk about the Kraken, I think it is, and the other hot ends lately, where you can have all these different extruder nozzles. But the IDEX system is going to be the best way to go because it's 2 separate carriages. Oh, did my video freeze there?
Yeah, your video froze.
Oh, bugger. Yeah,
let's bring up another question here real quick. Jerry, you got one?
Sorry, I do.
Yeah.
There we go.
Dave, is it my IDEX? No. The machine behind me is by WeDo. They do a lot of industrial machines, and they've done a couple Kickstarters lately. This is the WeDo X40, which I believe the retail was $7.99 US.
Yeah.
But it does seem to have the right feature set. I'm digging more into it before I give my final evaluation, but the hardware does seem quite nice so far.
Dominic Versetto, my results from Cura always seem to be more acceptable than those from PrusaSlicer. I have a feeling it's because I have trouble finding my Cura parameters in Prusa. Is there a document to translate? Not as far as I know.
No. There's no documentation. However, in Prusa, if you got a chance to watch my video there is a search field that you can search up keywords. Let me see if I can bring it up for you guys here, actually. Because it does outline every feature within Prusa, and that's one of the reasons why I honestly kind of love PrusaSlicer. I've actually fully moved over to it. Okay, so if we go here and go to our scene swap, here we are in PrusaSlicer, and at the top you can see there is this search function. So if you're looking for something like infill, here's every infill setting. Like literally every infill in the program. So if we go and say speed for print moves, gap fill, for instance, right? Infill, fill density, fill pattern. Let's click on fill pattern. So it takes us right to where it is and has an arrow flashing showing us where the setting is. Now, if you want to learn more about that, every link over here is actually a link straight to Prusa's site there. So if we go ahead and open that up and I bring it over on my browser here, it takes us right to fill pattern and tells us all about the different fill patterns and the different techniques, and it's organized by section. So everything is very well documented inside PrusaSlicer. What you got to watch for, and the biggest thing I found with PrusaSlicer, is make sure under printer settings, when you go to machine limits, either set all these values to equate to how your machine can run, or change this general how to apply to ignore or use for time estimate. Because when you emit it to G-code, the defaults for an FFF profile are something ridiculous like 9,000 millimeters per second squared, a higher jerk value, and it actually goes and updates the values on your printer. And if you save that to EEPROM, then it's actually going to save those every time you run your machine. So make sure if you are playing with this, that this is set to ignore by default so you don't override your printer defaults. And hopefully, that's been honestly the only thing that's really mucked up my prints with PrusaSlicer before, was not setting that and having it accidentally overwrite my firmware defaults.
All right, I know we got a question, but first, before we go to our next question, Dave Wilson with a super chat, $20. He says, always enjoy your videos. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate that. Thank you. Make sure when you donate that much the next time, make sure you actually ask a question, because I feel bad now.
All right, so I know we got a question from my brother Ray here.
There we go.
I saw it.
Hey, no playing favorites.
Uh-oh.
There it is. Can you find that one, Jerry?
Ray, you got your free tech support. Send us $20. Oh my gosh. So for those of you who are curious about my audio right now, I've got a compressor gate system I've hooked in, but because of how my audio board links back to it, it converted my blended stereo back to true stereo, and for whatever reason right now, Windows is locking me out of setting the audio input to one channel, so it's biasing me on the left, and I apologize for that. Hopefully I'll have that fixed by next week.
Okay, this is from Raymond Cleveland. Yes, it is a relation. A friend would like me to print a fountainhead for a pet pool. What would you recommend for filament? I would recommend either PETG or ABS. And with the printer I know that you have, I would probably put PETG through it. So that would be your best bet, because PETG will last in the elements, so that would be perfectly fine. And it's got a little bit of give to it as well.
Yeah, now with if it's for a pet pool, bear in mind that when you have 3D print something, and this is probably a bad example, but if we look at our lines here on this guy, hopefully it'll actually come in here. Maybe not. No, it's too white. Darn you, Matter 3D, for your clear filament. Basically, whenever you print something in FDM, you're printing layers upon layers. Actually, you know what? I got a piece here that is super ugly, but will do it quite well. So we've got, let's see here, come on. Oh, you're finding my face through that hole? There we go. So all these little layer lines, if you're running water through it that can be contaminated with pet slobber or bacteria or anything, it can bind in there, and without being able to scrub the surface, it can build up a little bit. So just bear that in mind. I always recommend resin coating with a food-safe resin just over top of those surfaces, just to make sure it can't build up any kind of bacteria. Probably for animals and the nature of how much you're cycling it would be fine. I wouldn't say to print a mug and drink out of it, but That's what I would suggest is, resin coat it, just seal it off a little bit so that there's no place for bacteria to grow.
There you go. Jerry, we got another question? There we go. From Greg's Vintage Workshop. He says, twice I've done a PID tune and adjusted Z-step current from 580 to 720. Both times everything was fine for a few days, then the extruder stopped extruding out of nowhere. Reloading firmware fixes that. Usually when that happens...
It's a part 2.
What's that?
It's a 2-parter.
Oh, it's in 2 parts? Okay. Downloaded older version of firmware, followed by reloading current version 2.8.2. It's fine thereafter. Has Mingda done something that prevents someone from changing parameters in the firmware? No. But if you are changing those voltages, you are going to probably run into trouble because they've already been tuned for the motors that are on there. So be aware of that. I didn't bring mine up to 700. I did change mine to about 650, I believe, and mine have been working fine.
It actually varies motor to motor based off the manufacturing.
Yeah.
So some of mine I run at 850, some of them are run at 550. There's all sorts of different motors out there, so you have to find the right balance where it can actually hold the torque and move it accordingly and not overheat, because you can overvolt them or overcurrent them. It can cause some issues. Notably, I've seen where if the current is too high, it'll actually jump between steps rather than allowing you to do microstepping. It's a very fine balance, and it's going to require some tuning.
And what do we have next, Jerry? We're just on a roll here today.
Yeah, we're just rolling. And sorry, guys, I am tweaking the compression gate over here, so let me know if my audio is sounding better, albeit in one channel only. My apologies.
Has anyone any luck getting the Marlin source code from Creality rather than just the compiled hex or bin files under the open source license? Should that not make source code available? Source code is available. You just have to go to the right website to get it.
Naomi Wu, I think, is still hosting most of the Creality source code on her GitHub.
Okay.
Creality is not releasing it on their main site last time I checked.
Yeah, they are, actually. I'll just look it up.
Are they?
Yes, because
Okay.
I just downloaded it the other day.
Oh, okay. Maybe they're getting better. This has been an ongoing battle. Again, even with the WeDo behind me, I have to contact the company there. Because yes, as per the GPL open sourcing agreement there, anybody who uses Marlin code has to distribute it under the same license of the original Marlin code. So manufacturers, truth be told, I want you guys to tell us if you contact a company and they're not releasing that code, they deserve a shame, honestly.
Yep, they do. I've just put a link in the chat so you guys can go and get the source code for your machine from there.
It's not popping up on my side. Oh, there it is. Perfect. Little delayed.
Yeah, a little delayed. Yeah, I just downloaded from there the other day for another one. So, all right, next. Was that the SKR board I'm setting up in the Ender 5 Plus right now? Sorry, hope you get yours soon. Yes, it was. It was. I have an SKR 1.3 sitting here, still brand new, but this is perhaps going into a project that now Brian and I are working on, seeing as we can talk a little bit about that as we're getting closer to launch.
It all takes time. I won't lie to you guys. Designing stuff takes like 4 months minimum.
Yeah. We are currently engaged in building a Voron 2.4 version, the 300 Voron 300. So it is a 300 build volume, cubed. And at the end of the day, we're trying this out as we kind of pare down our printers and replace them with reliable working printers, because what we are planning on doing is opening or launching our print service. It'll be a print-on-demand service, and we will be using all the same printer to do it. We are going to keep other printers around for testing filaments, things like that. Like we get new filaments from Matter 3D now all the time, and when they come in, we have to have a variety of machines to test them on. So we are going to keep some of our Crealities and our Mingdas and things like that, just so that we can test them.
Speaking of which, thank you to those of you who are joining us mid-show, and an incentive for people to keep watching. We have got a special offer for you guys this week here.
Yes.
Richard, we don't have anything to pop up on the screen, do we?
No.
No? Okay, well, if you guys go to Matter 3D and want to buy some filament, go ahead and use the discount code TFL10. So Tom Frank Lima 10, and that will get you 10% off your order. So that brings the PLA down even cheaper there. So
Yeah.
time to stock up. They just got their brand new machine going, and I can't wait to tell you guys all about filament extruding in the future there. But things are ramping up, and we're excited to see the new stuff coming out.
We are, very much so. They're launching new colors very soon, and we're waiting to get some of their first batches off the new extruder or filament making machine. So I'm super stoked about that. What do we got next, Jerry? This is from Snapshot FPV. He says, hey, try printing Maker's Muse Easter torture egg on my new DL-002H, or LD, sorry. 135% scale, printed beautifully, but rotating layers all fused. Seemed that the printer doesn't do well with tight clearances. If you're doing that on a resin printer, chances are resin is getting caught and cured in between the pieces that need to move. So I don't know that torture egg is a good thing to do on a resin printer. I think that's more meant for an FDM. Now, I could be wrong about that. Brian?
Yeah, it's so the challenge is with the torture Easter egg. I'd have to look again at the exact STL there, but when it stacks like that, what you got to remember is that it relies on kind of bridging, if you will, creating a weak interface layer similar to a support, so that it will print, and then when you get it out, you basically break those little linkages that were essentially sag from your nozzle. Now, in the resin world, that doesn't exist, so you have to look at how each layer would technically bind to something. And what I've found, it all comes down to orientation. So if you ever get a chance to look up on resin overhangs, the latest version of Chitubox actually has this feature that shows you all the overhang points that would not print because there's nothing for it to stick to when it turns on the backlight. And I have a feeling that's a similar issue with the Easter egg torture test. I'm gonna put one of those on my machine this week, at least on the FDM, because now that seems like a fun calibration test to run. But yes, it is not at all meant. Oh, hey, did you just change something? Because now
I did.
Oh, wait. Now you're on my left channel.
Now I'm
you're
on
my
all
center.
your channels.
Hey, look at us fixing audio. Remember, guys, we focus on 3D printing, so our audio skills kind of slip, between Richard producing new content, we really join this call about 5 minutes before the show, so if something goes wrong, we need to plan a little bit better.
Yeah, just a little bit. All right, what's next, Jerry?
Okay. Non-fam, I will look into that right after the show here. I believe the filament's all been dispersed there, so we will check into that for you.
Okay, so Pagan Wizard, he says, I always hear about people talking about germs of certain filaments, yet many, many home kitchens have wooden utensils. The reason that they're talking about germs is because when you look at a print, it's made up of layer lines, and food particles can get stuck between those layer lines. So if you're not washing them correctly, you could run into a serious problem. Now, that being said, if you are printing with a food safe material, be aware that once it goes through that extruder, because you've already put a number of different materials through and it's not been sterilized and it's not been cleaned, even though the material might be food safe, by the time it comes out the other end, usually it's not. Now, that being said, I've printed cookie cutters for my wife out of PLA, and they still are working to this day, and I haven't died, so she hasn't poisoned me.
Not
What you got to remember,
Tried.
so when you have wooden utensils, you can put it through a dishwasher and disinfect it. Now, usually when you have wooden stuff, you will scrub it down, which removes all those surface contaminants. But for instance, if you go and put a cutting board through the dishwasher, eventually it's going to start failing, and you're never going to remove certain particles like the soap particles in there. You might notice it on the taste of something, and then usually people end up just either giving it a really good scrub under hot water to remove the surface layer, or they'll just toss it out and buy a new one. But when it comes to PLA, see, the problem is PLA, it melts at like 60 degrees Celsius, so you can't put it through a dishwasher. There's just lots of little. It really comes down to the layer lines too. Is that there's a lot more grooves in a piece of filament printed than there would be with a piece of wood that's been sheared and polished down in a lot of cases. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of precaution. I've been in that bad habit this week of watching those YouTube channels that talk about all the medical issues and when something goes incredibly wrong. And basically what you learn is you might be fine, or you might be that one unlucky individual. So we'd rather play it safe and just tell you not to do it.
Yeah. And yes, I've seen people that have put PETG particles or items in their dishwasher. Just be aware that if your dishwasher is using really, really hot water, it can deform it. So this one's from...
Yeah, it's just PLA is low. I mean, take a look next time if you're wandering around your house. Go down to your hot water heater and see what the hot water set point's set at.
There you go.
And if you're in Europe, your dishwashers have their own built-in heaters, so it might go even hotter. That's what I'm saying is PLA is pretty much guaranteed to deform inside a dishwasher with enough runs. PETG, you might be able to skirt it. Same thing with ABS.
Phil says, hey TFL, I can't seem to fix Z-banding on my CR-10S. I've lubricated Z-rods, checked everything, and still no luck when a few months ago the print was great. Any idea, please? There's a couple of things that could be going on here. One could be speed, and you'll hear me say that as my first go-to. You may be printing too fast. Secondly, it may not be the mechanics. It might actually be in the belts. The belts could be stretched, so that could cause Z-banding. You may have some loose screws, not up here, but on your machine. And so I would just go back and double check all that. When printing with the CR-10S, I never typically print over 50 mils per second. Because I get the nicest quality of that, and it's also going to depend on what quality you're printing at as well. Brian?
Yeah, and I was going to say too, we spoke about it almost every single week, but Teaching Tech's printer calibration guide, go there and download his cube, generate it and download it and run it on your machine, and that will immediately identify if something has changed in your slicer or if you have a mechanical issue.
And on to our next question. Jerry's got a busy job today.
Larry, you sous vide steak in your dishwasher? That is amazing. I've got an Anova, so I'm running a brisket downstairs right now for probably about 96 hours. So that is amazing. You're going to have to post a photo or send me a photo of that sometime.
Cord XTC, one of our members, he says, question with the Ender 3, how often should you replace the brass end? Would prints start to showing the effects of a bad end, or is it just based off time to change it? No. Your nozzle, and I think I have one right here. Here's one right here.
Richard, can you pull down your gain just a little bit? It's
No.
really peaking bad now.
No.
No? Okay. Okay.
Let me just go ahead and do that.
Sorry, I know I break the path here. We are just having audio nightmares this week.
How's that? Is that better?
Oh, that's clean on my side. It's quiet, but it's very clean.
It's quiet.
Give us a thumbs up in the chat if Richard's level is good.
Is that better? There we go. We'll leave it at that. All right, so
yeah, I
let
just
me
listened.
go to the
Perfect.
overhead here real quick. And you'll see I have a nozzle. I have other nozzles here too. Here, let's use this one. This is a Creality nozzle. So when we look at a Creality nozzle, we can see that this is all brass, as we know. And the more that this hits the bed or hits your print, the more it slowly starts to deform. So I'm usually changing out my nozzles about every... Oh, you guys can't even see that. I haven't cut to that. That's why. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So you can see here, this is a normal 0.4 nozzle. This one's for a CR-10S Pro. And these will deform over time. Heat will deform them. Banging them into your print will deform them. Bouncing them off your bed will deform them. They're not very hard. So, yes, I would say about every 1,000 to 1,200 hours, change out your nozzle if you need to. If it's still printing fine, then you should be fine. But a good thing to do is to keep it clean by using that brass brush, which we've talked about many, many times. I don't have one right beside me at the moment, and you don't want to use anything harsh to take off the filament that may be coming out of there. So a pair of good tweezers, you just want to get in there and just take off any residual plastic that might be there. Don't squeeze this. Like, I've seen people use a pair of pliers like this to try and get off the little end. And I'm guilty of it too. I've done it because I can't find my tweezers. But you can accidentally, when this is hot, deform that nozzle. Okay, so just be careful. And nozzles should last you, like I said, about every 1,000 hours of 3D printing should be fine.
The material, how often you scrub it, the bore quality of the nozzle, there's a million factors.
Yeah.
Usually what I do, and a good idea, is just to have a spare 0.4 on hand. And
I talked about this recently.
Yeah, because basically, sometimes we don't have calipers on hand. I've got a bunch of them, but a lot of people don't have them. So it's hard to measure that internal diameter of the nozzle to make sure it hasn't expanded. But if you have a spare nozzle right beside it, you can do a side-by-side eyeball, and if there's any noticeable nozzle size difference on that hole, then your print settings are just going out the window, and you're probably seeing a degradation in the quality.
All right, from Stephen Snow, when I manually level the bed with a sticky note, all is great and the auto bed level numbers come out good. I check bed level. The sticky note won't ever slide under the nozzle. Why does this change? It's probably because of the offset, Stephen. Your offset is not set correctly, and that would be the cause of what's happening there, because it's dropping down lower than it should. Right? Yes,
and it is a tough calibration to do. I'm going to be talking about that in the next little bit here too. My apologies. I got all these little tidbits that are coming out right now. So the fact is yes, Z offset can be a headache. And my best recommendation is, before you do any bed leveling, home your nozzle, go and move it down to Z0, disable your software end stops, and then step it down until you have a little bit of resistance on that paper. That will tell you how much you need to adjust your Z offset by, and then go do your bed leveling. And once you've done that, it should return to the same point. Now, if it's not, it is entirely possible that you're actually getting fluctuations on the accuracy of your probe, whether it's a BL touch or a conductive or inductive or any kind of sensor, right? There's a command in Marlin, if you are modifying your firmware, called M48 that you really should have on your firmware, because it will go and probe the same point on the bed 10 times and will tell you what your deviation is. And if it's bigger than 0.004, 0.005, you're starting to get into almost layer heights at that point, and you're going to start seeing lots of deviations on your print. Namely, you have to baby step on every print start. In a perfect world, you want to get that down to like 0.001, but it is a little tricky. You can do various things such as slow down your Z movement. You can do things such as turning off the heaters when probing. There's a whole plethora of issues, but usually I find that's why it deviates so much print to print, is the accuracy is actually out.
And what's next, Jerry? Jerry just keeps bringing up the hits today.
Yeah. And I've got the YouTube feed on one screen, so yeah.
Hey, I just got my CR6SE as my first printer and playing with the extrusion modifier on Cura. Should the lines just overlap slightly, or should they just be ultra thin cap between them? Or I'm thinking he means gap between them. There should be no gap between your lines for the layer. So, but don't over squish them, because when you over squish, just like I talked about with that nozzle earlier, you are pushing that nozzle, that hot nozzle, down into the bed if you've got too much squish. So that can wear out your nozzle pretty quickly. But we've talked about this already today, but on the Teaching Tech calibration tool, there is a bed level tool that you can generate some G-code for bed leveling. And I use it all the time. I actually have one on all of the SD cards that I use for various different printers. And to be perfectly honest with you, it does work the best.
Yeah, absolutely. What you got to watch for, and again, I apologize because it's my answer of the day. It's in an upcoming video. We're going to talk about what the squish actually looks like, because at the end of the day, when you're extruding material out of a nozzle at a microscopic level, if you will, it comes out like a cylinder, and you're squishing down that cylinder, and you got to find a way. And this is why we adjust our first layer, because if you don't get it right on the first layer, it's going to take 30 to 40 layers to try and compensate and find swelling room inside the body of your print until it can equalize to the proper width. And if you squish too much, you're going to get bulging out. If you don't squish enough, you're going to get larger loops on the outside. So we're gonna be covering that soon. It just requires a lot more in-depth look than what we can cover in a live stream, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Geez, we're just moving along today. Jerry's having to work today.
Greg's Vintage Workshop, great question. Is a copper nozzle better than brass? Does it last longer?
Yes.
So,
copper does last longer.
Yes, but not by much. Copper is still a very soft material. Now, I'll tell you why you buy a copper. The copper nozzle is marketed because copper is an excellent heat conductor. And so it goes and keeps the nozzle hotter even if you have colder air blowing from the outside. It just simply can transfer heat better. Now, how much of a factor does that play? Generally, unless you're going to really high temp materials like 300 plus, it's not going to be a nominal difference. Now, myself, I don't like brass nozzles and I don't like copper ones because being such a soft material, if you accidentally over torque it, you can strip it really easily while trying to remove it, and then you have to replace your whole block there. So myself, I actually prefer to go to the stainless steel nozzles because they might not be as effective at conducting heat. However, I can abate that with different ways of insulating the block to keep the heat down there, or even bumping up a couple degrees to compensate for that melting point. Because PLA is not going to burn at 230, for instance, but if it still comes out of the nozzle at 215, then you're good. That's a really extreme example. But if you get a stainless steel nozzle, it's just going to prevent wear so much better than your brass nozzles, and they're like negligible on the price difference. I think it's like $8 versus $10 at most places.
Now, I've got a micro Swiss here in front of me, so I'm just going to switch to that camera. And you can see here, this is literally a copper nozzle, but it has been plated. So it is wear resistant. It's a copper nozzle underneath this nickel plating. This will last longer than your typical brass nozzle. So this is maybe something to consider going with. I really like these nozzles. The plated wear nozzles, I haven't changed one for probably about 2 years in my machines. And I run a lot of stuff through them. Now, bear in mind, if you're going to run materials that have an additive to them, like the metal fills or the wood fills or the glow in the dark, anything that has an abrasive in it, this nozzle won't last very long. So, because it will wear not as fast as the brass, but it will wear, and then you'll want to go to a hardened steel or a stainless steel nozzle. So, but in the interim, if you want brass, get a plated nozzle. These do conduct heat really, really well.
Yeah, and talking about plated nozzles, there's these dual material ones on the market now. Now, in a perfect realm, what I would look for is I would look for a copper nozzle that's fully plated with stainless steel material, notably on the inside. It doesn't have to be on the outside, but that's a nice perk. When we, kind of the earliest example of seeing this on the market was the Olsen Ruby, where they put the ruby tip in there. And really, if you looked at it, it was just a stainless steel nozzle with a high temp adhesive holding this ruby in there, so the filament flowed through the ruby. But the whole hot end wasn't a ruby itself, and it makes sense why not. Again,
actually, the nozzles were brass.
Oh, were they brass? Yeah,
they were brass
cheaper,
with a piece of ruby material at the end.
And truth be told, I liked the concept of it. That would truly be a buy it for life nozzle, if not for the really crummy adhesive.
Yeah.
Because whatever they used did not bind well with the brass, and that was the most common issue we saw, was the ruby itself falling out. And ruby it's a real strong material, and I think I kind of think they used it just for the sake of saying, hey, it's a ruby and not something like quartz. But the whole point is to reduce degradation and to keep that nozzle solid. And I don't think filament binds to ruby. I never experimented with it because I'm sorry. It's $150 Canadian, guys, for a nozzle. Think about how many nozzles you could buy and break before justifying that price point, right? Unless you're an industrial producer, I wouldn't worry about it.
There you go. What's up next, G?
Did you answer this one?
Yes, we did.
Surprise of Vanilla Coke, which is not our sponsor, but
Alterations been away a while, but did we get any BLV news?
Yeah. You'll notice it's actually missing from behind me here because it's sitting on a chair in the other room because I had to make some room for some machines. Guys, as I mentioned, I was going through printer hell. I mean, this is the quality that my machine was producing. It was garbage. And it was 100%, if you missed the initiation of the show, it was 100% due to that CR10 carriage. Now, luckily, if you find the right keywords, you can buy these now on Amazon for about $50, and they're actually better engineered than the original one. So in my case, one of these holes was just slightly stripped, and so my block was wiggling ever so slightly, like to a point you couldn't even feel it. But, any movement on these machines gets amplified when 3D printing, and that's where the precision comes from. So especially if you have Creality machines, we always talk about parts to have on hand. For $10, order yourself a spare one, because you just never know if that threading hole goes. There's no easy way to rebore it without going up a bolt size.
Now, I'm going to pull out a piece or two here for the Voron, just to kind of show you the print quality that we're getting. And here on the table, yes, it's black on black, but this is one of the pieces for the Voron, and I am not disappointed in this print at all. Wow. This is done in the Matter 3D black.
That's their matte black ABS, right?
That's the matte black ABS, yes.
Oh,
and this,
it's beautiful.
It is. And this is the white.
Wow.
So I got to tell you, I am super impressed by the quality of these parts. Now, bear in mind, if you're going to build a Voron at some point in the future, we're actually going to do a complete build log on it as we start to put it together and parts come in. But right now, suffice it to say that this part has 40% infill in it, which is something I would normally never do. But I'm following the Voron recommendations, and it's got 5 top layers, 5 bottom layers, 4 walls, and 40% infill. So this part is solid. So is this part. This is for one of the feet. This actually goes on down here, and the foot sits on there. But this is just one of the parts, and I've got more of the parts in here. I learned a fancy trick about getting that whites off your ABS parts, and I'll talk about that in one of our tips coming up this week. So, but the Voron, and let's just talk about the ABS for a moment. The ABS, this is solid. Like, I'm stressing that, and that's not going anywhere. So, do I like the Matter 3D ABS? Absolutely, I do.
Yeah, you know what? I've got, like, seriously, this is the PLA. I'm trying to break this. I'm sorry, this stuff is stupidly strong. Like, I haven't done any temperature tests for it yet, but all my mechanical parts, without a doubt, this is even on my bad nozzle we were talking about. You know, you can see me turning red, and no, I'm not completely weak. I am weak, but not completely. I can't even flex that. I feel like that guy in Napoleon Dynamite when he's trying to break the Tupperware. He's like, can't do it.
So,
like, it's good stuff. So I posted in the chat, for those of you who missed it earlier, use code TFL10 at checkout at Matter 3D today for 10% off your entire order. And
Yes.
it's not a one-time only code. I just confirmed that. So you can go and place multiple orders with that code. Brings PLA down to, I think, $27, give or take, right now. And Pet G comes down to 30, 37 or something there. I did see a question earlier about gray, so just quickly addressing that. We are working with them on their gray to make sure the color code is a nice code. I unfortunately don't have any pieces to show you off based off that test batch. Oh, okay. So, you know, Richard can show that, and then I'm going to show you something new video-wise that's coming up too.
okay, hang on. Let me just go here. Okay, so while my brother was here, my brother Raymond, who he just went back on Wednesday, I was teaching him how to use a 3D printer, and he took home one of the Lotmaxx 3D printers that I had here, and we printed these trays. He found these trays for your SD cards, and as you can see, I have quite a collection. And this is the gray from Matter 3D. This is their gray, and this was printed very rough, but it was printed nonetheless. And it has tons of storage. This is just an SD, micro SD, and USB drive, as well as a tray for all of your other crap.
I need one of those because literally yesterday I found another 15 thumb drives. You know, this is what happens when you go cleaning. Because Costco, for those of you who don't know, always gets a new deal on new thumb drives. And actually, Memory Express this week is selling a 1 terabyte thumb drive. But, you know, this is the one I've got, the one from Thingiverse. This was printed in Matter 3D transparent on my problematic printer, so it still turned out quite nice. But I still got another handful of SD cards and card readers and all that, so I'm going to need that STL. Now, on my side, what I've been working on here is, if you saw my discussions previously, we were talking about Musso Black, and I wasn't able to get it to paint properly on PLA, but I did order their flock sheet. I had to get it from Amazon US, so it took a bit. But I want you to, you know, we're going to be shooting a lot more photos on this backdrop here, and I want to show you how black this really is.
Wow.
And this is no color correction. Okay, this is me right now. I'm gone. It is amazingly dark. You can see the bit of the back there, and then this is the front side. You know, in person it's not as contrast darkening, but you know, it stops shadows altogether. So we're going to have some really cool photos coming up on this material. You can see you can't even see the seam lines for the most part. It's wild. So yeah, photography wise, we're up in our game on that aspect, especially with Richard's overhead cam, since it seems we always feature black products.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, I'm going to show you this here, because you know, here's the black drop, and here's a motor. You can see what the color difference is.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So you know that you got thumb drives, different like Corsair ones. So it's really going to show how black a color is to the naked eye. So I'm super excited to use these.
All right, we got time for a couple more questions, Jerry. What do you got?
Nothing.
This one's from Carl. He says, I've been printing the same Tiger tank model on my Ender 3 at 0.08 and my longer 10 resin printer at 0.05. Any idea as to why my Ender is producing more detail than the resin printer?
Well,
that's an interesting... It shouldn't be.
Okay, so for the longer 10, which slicer are you using? Because when it comes to resin, there are actually some interesting features in how resin works. So if you consider your resin is an LCD screen, and if you've ever played video games, you may be familiar with this: edge sharpness, dithering, anti-aliasing. And what it is it's a means to kind of create a partially bright pixel to go and blur edges to make them smoother. Otherwise, you have very harsh edges on your object. Now in Chitubox, there's settings for anti-aliasing for, you know, 2-fold, 8-fold, where it basically cycles the pixels on and off to go and create a partial cure to help smoothen out edges. And if you're seeing a lot of .05 is usually a pretty fair height. I think I usually do mine at .02. I could be wrong. Definitely the resolution. The thing is with resin, because it's so sharp, any kind of deformities are actually going to show up way clearer. So, I mean, first and foremost, if you could print it, if you're willing to wait a bit longer and print at that lower layer height, you're going to get that detail. However, if you're insistent on using .05, look into the slicer for, I think it's called dithering.
Dithering, yes.
I think they call it dithering as a setting in here. Let me just pull up.
It's in G2 box, yeah.
It's under anti-aliasing is what they call it. Sorry. So let me just bring up my screen here for you. OBS. There we go. So underneath the advanced settings for G2 box, there's this checkbox for anti-aliasing. And they don't give you much information on it, but basically, if you go to 8 levels, it's going to cycle over its final render 8 times and generate these partial pixels. It won't actually increase your print time generally. It's more just dealing with areas where the polygon creeps in between 2 theoretical pixel lengths. And I know that's a bit of a mouthful there, but trust me, you want this feature on, because this is going to make your life. It's going to make your prints just look that much better, because it's trying to create a higher resolution image on a lower resolution screen. So hopefully that gives you some direction. Please try it and let me know what your results are like. I by default have my anti-aliasing cranked all the way up because I'd rather have those smoothened edges.
Now, there's been some discussion in the chat. I'm just kind of catching it here about ABS, PETG, and they're all coming from 3D Obsession. It says PLA and PETG are not recommended for Voron printed because they don't hold up well in the enclosure it prints in. And that's very true. Voron printers are supposed to be enclosed to print ANS. I'm not sure what ANS is. That's a new one on me.
There
or ABS, sorry, he says. ABS.
Yeah, sorry. There's a whole bunch of new materials coming out on the market, so we don't just rule it out as, we're talking about standard one right now.
ABS, the ABS that I'm using for these parts, incidentally, can be printed on an open-air printer, because as we've discovered, that the ABS from Matter 3D is very low off-gassing. The odor that comes from it is very, very minimal. And you can print it on an open-air machine. You are just going to have to use a draft shield and just make sure that your machine can get up to the temperatures that it needs to get up to. We have both experimented with it, and I've gotten up to 265 degrees to start my print. After about 5-10 layers, I will dump that down about 10 degrees, and then about another 10 to 20 layers, I'll dump it down again another 10 degrees. It works out just fine. We get no splitting, we get no cracking, we get no warping. The only thing that's going to look like hell is your draft shield. I haven't had one that came out complete yet, but I do really like that material for that aspect.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of do a little spiel here for those members. One of the benefits of joining our channel here is at an infill level, we give little Tuesday tips every couple of weeks. And one of the things we did recently was talking about printing this Matter 3D here on an Ender 3 using a draft shield. And if I jump ahead here, we'll see if we can get the video of it. You can see here it is just printing open air. Apologies, my camera wasn't the greatest. But the parts printed without warping within that shield on an Ender 3. And this is one of the many ways that you can print ABS open air, but this one does definitely insulate it quite a bit. So yeah, if you join our channel here at the infill level, you will get an extra little tip on Tuesdays, and we will eventually be compiling a bunch of these into a general release video, but you'll be the first ones to see it. So, and with that, if you're at that level and you got something that's bothering you, let us know and we will create a Tuesday tip on how to fix it.
Before I move on to Carl's question, I just want to say 3D Obsession, thank you very much for the super chat, $4.99. He says, thanks for another outstanding live Q&A. We do appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad that you got something out of today's video.
Super chat.
Just sounds like a dial 1-900 girl, doesn't she?
I was just thinking, remember those late night commercials? That's really dating us there, where it's like, call me on the sexy hotline 1-900, only $4.99 a minute. Ladies talk free.
Yeah, there you go.
Man, who's old enough to remember that? Give a thumbs up in the chat there.
There you go.
Henry Stoffren's asking, when do you get to go to Matter 3D? Well, simply put, when we get the jab.
Yeah. Right now, this one's from Carl. He says, I'm putting another one at 0.025 now. Thanks for the info, guys. I'll give it a shot. Ante is on and set to 8. Great. Excellent.
Okay, so Carl, one thing to remember, because I see you divided that by 2. That may not be a magic layer height for your machine, and we talked about this a lot in the early FDM days when there was a lot of variable lead screws. But what you want to look into and find out from the manufacturer is what is the lead screw design on your printer, because, for instance, on a Creality machine, the magic number is 0.04. Which is you should increment by 0.04 millimeters per layer.
Correct.
Otherwise, you're getting micro step layers in between, and simply it just results in a better quality print. With resin machines, it should be the same, which is 0.04 millimeter layer height increments, which you can divide down to like 0.02 or 0.01. But at 0.25, occasionally you're going to be using a micro step in between. And if you notice some layer banding especially, then I would go and stick to those magic numbers.
Oh, I cut him off.
Oh,
sorry. We are at the end of the show, so I want to remind you that if you do have questions during the week, please send them to questions@thefirstlayer.com, and we will get to answering those questions on the Sunday live stream. This week we didn't have any questions that came in, so I'm sad about that. So I'm sad.
But on the plus side, maybe that means we're doing something right.
It could be.
People are learning from their mistakes. Who knows?
Everybody give a big thumbs up to Jerry, who has been running our chat today, and she's been sending up the questions to the screen. Give her a big thumbs up.
Thank you, Jerry. And for those of you who hung to the end, thank you for tolerating our audio issues. I'm hoping
sorry about that.
Yeah.
We're going to work that out this week.
Now, Mika Henry, I see your comment there, and actually that's a great question. Have you all heard of the Uniz IB, which I had not until I looked up on their website. I backed it. I'm still wondering when it's going to be here. I just want to give a general statement here, guys.
Yeah.
I don't believe in Kickstarter printers. I'm sorry, because as one of the people who backed one of the earliest Kickstarters of resin machines, the Peachy printer, there truly is no guarantee you'll ever get that product, and when you do, I've generally found it's been a letdown. In fact, I've only backed probably 10 or 15 Kickstarters over the years, and it's really a 50-50 turnaround, because what you're doing is you're providing capital for the company to build the product, but they have no experience generally. I don't agree with big corporations using Kickstarter, but that's just a different matter. When a company like this comes in, Uniz, I can see they have the IB, the UB, and the /2. They're still on pre-order, and in fact, when you click on pre-order on the website, it goes to 404 page not found. So that's very concerning.
Yep.
The fact is, Kickstarter, if it's too good to be true, it usually is too good to be true. Resin machines, frankly, right now, I wouldn't back any Kickstarters because the technology is changing by the week. In the last year, we got mono LCDs, we have higher brightness systems, we've had larger LCDs, and there's a couple projects I've actually been looking into, such as Nano DLP, which is a do-it-yourself system, where for a couple $100, the sky is the limit for the resin machine you can build. But when it comes to these Kickstarters, unfortunately, number one, they're 98% guaranteed not to meet their delivery date unless they were in pre-production prior to the commencement of the Kickstarter, such as, I'm going to shoot myself for saying this, the Sunlu Filla Dryer was ready to ship, but there was drama with that. But most products, like right now I'm backing a, what would you call it, a head-mounted display that was supposed to ship in March, and as expected, they've delayed it now to May, but they're at least giving good production updates. So you could be waiting. Jess, how long have you been waiting for that 3D printer now?
4 years?
4 years? Yeah, QBot, I think it is. Yeah, that one's
I don't
4
think
years.
that's going to happen.
It's not. The weirdest thing is they're still giving updates, but is it coming? Probably not. If it ever does come, are we going to want it? Probably not. So yeah, please stick with reputable companies. At least if you buy things on Amazon, as we've been discussing with manufacturers recently, Amazon is very consumer friendly in that you could return it to them for any reason, and they'll give you your money back, and it actually really screws the retailer. So, buy reputable products or kind of go the DIY approach.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go the Kickstarter route because Kickstarter is generally hype based off of philosophy, not based off of product.
All right, with that said, that brings us to the end of our episode today, and we are going to see you again on Tuesday with another great tip, and then we will see you next Saturday. We're not sure if we're going to jump into Cura again as the fourth slicer that we've been doing in our series, but we may jump into something else, take a little break, and then come back to that.
So if you've watched our series, I'd love to hear what third-party slicer we haven't covered. If there's something you'd like us to cover, for instance, Ice SL. If there's odd slicers out there. Zortrax has their own slicer, which I've been using for resin. There's a couple different products out there. It's very competitive now. So if there's a slicer you've heard wins about, like Lychee Slicer, for instance, for resin, let us know in the comments below or in the chat here, and that'll help us cater our content towards you guys moving forward.
And if you want to become a member, all you got to do is hit that little join button that's down underneath this video, and that will allow you to get into the different levels and become a member of our little behind-the-scenes club. We've got more stuff coming your way this summer. We're still trying to decide what we're doing for a summer project. We haven't really...
Summer has to exist first.
Yeah. So if you guys have any suggestions about what you'd like to see us do within reason, financial reason, of course, we will do it. And we will make something this summer, and we'll use the summer as a project for you and your family. This is the idea of our summer episodes, is to help you get your family involved in 3D printing or using 3D printing in your summer activities. And again, it works out to family because, with all this nonsense going on in the world, we're still under quarantine, a lot of us. We can't go anywhere, and we just heard that restrictions here in Alberta are not going to be lifted anytime soon.
We are about probably 6 months behind the United States and other countries, and unfortunately it was due to a bad procurement gamble up here, if you will. Putting politics all aside and all that. Simply put, we are not receiving vaccines nearly at the rate of everywhere else in the world. And right now, for myself, even though I'm a professional who travels a lot, I'm still going to qualify under general public. So they're suggesting it might be June or July, to give you guys an idea. So that's why it's really hindering our ability to do collaboration projects right now. So we're kind of working on the around the house thing. Let us know if that's what you guys are wanting to work on around the house, or if you're looking for outdoor projects. Again, we produce this content for you, and also teaching ourselves at the same time. So we definitely take all ideas open, and we'd love to hear what other people are doing.
Absolutely. And with that said, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. Jerry's already left us. Went away. Brian, thanks for joining us. I see Jess was in the background. Give her our love.
Yes, lean over.
And we are going to see you guys. There she is. We're going to see you guys next week. So have yourselves a great Sunday. And I just got a couple of messages here that I now have to take care of.
Nice.
All right. You guys have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.